The man who gave everything. There was a time when he would have given everything for others before they even asked. He would rush into their storms without ever stopping to notice his own. He offered his laughter while quietly carrying his sadness. He made sure everyone else was all right, even when he was nowhere close. He poured and poured and poured until there was nothing left inside him. And when the moment finally came where he needed someone to stand beside him, no one did. No one realized he was fading. No one heard the softness in his voice that used to be full of life. No one noticed how empty his eyes had become. No one even bothered to ask if he was okay. And that's when something within him shifted. Not loud or dramatic, but subtle, like a door clicking shut somewhere deep in his mind. He understood then that it wasn't pure kindness driving him. It was the fear of being left alone. And it struck him hard. He had taught people how to treat him by always placing himself last. He remembered the way he had begged for people to stay without saying a word. How he did everything right and still ended up forgotten. How he handed out pieces of himself so others could feel complete while he felt himself growing emptier. He remembered the nights he stared at his phone waiting for messages that never came, the fake smiles, the forced strength, the excuses he made for their distance while slowly losing his own sense of worth. He remembered blaming himself for being too much or not enough, depending on who walked away that week. He remembered apologizing for his hurt and hiding his feelings so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And when he finally shattered, he did it quietly, because deep down he believed no one would hear him even if he tried. When no one came silence, he finally uncovered the truth. He wasn't hurting because he was weak. He was hurting because he cared so deeply and received almost nothing in return. And he realized that the only person who had stayed beside him through everything was himself. When he looked into the mirror, for the first time in years, he didn't see someone without worth. He saw someone exhausted, someone loyal, someone worn out from loving harder than he had ever been loved. And that's when he made one of the hardest choices of his life. He chose himself, not out of arrogance, but out of survival. Not to harm anyone, but to finally begin healing. Not because his love faded, but because he finally allowed himself to matter. He stopped explaining his heart to those who never listened. He stopped chasing conversations that only lived because he kept them alive. He stopped fighting for people who wouldn't make even the smallest effort for him. He stopped pouring energy into connections that left him empty. And he sat with that loneliness. Instead of running away, he paid attention to it. He let it show him what he truly deserved. He let it ache. And he let it clear out old emotional weight, like a fire burning away what no longer belonged. He let it rebuild him, not into someone bitter, but someone wiser, not colder, but more aware, not detached, but finally whole. And people around him noticed. They said he had changed. They said he didn't care like he used to. They said he wasn't the same person anymore. And he smiled, because for the first time, they were right. He was no longer the man who settled for scraps of attention. He was no longer the man who feared being alone so much that he accepted being treated poorly. He was no longer the man who searched for validation from people who never appreciated his worth. No, now he moved differently, not with ego, but with calm. Now he spoke less, but with intention. Now he trusted carefully, but loved more genuinely. Now he understood that anyone who truly belonged in his life would never make him feel like he was a burden in theirs. His breaking point. And when people returned, when they suddenly remembered how gentle his heart once was, when they missed the version of him who would have done anything for them, he didn't react with anger. He didn't seek payback. He simply chose not to reopen the door, because he knew those same people would only leave it hanging open again. He had spent too many nights fixing the damage caused by people who never stayed long enough to see what they'd broken. He remembered how deeply it hurt to be forgotten by people he would have given everything for. And now, he wasn't giving his life away anymore. He was living for himself. He began rebuilding his inner world like a man repairing a ship that once sank beneath him. No longer waiting for someone else to save him, he gathered every cracked piece and placed it back where it belonged. Each scar, each disappointment, each broken promise became bricks in the wall protecting the person he was growing into. Not walls to shut others out, but walls to guard his peace. The man he was becoming didn't plead. He didn't pursue. He didn't ache over doors that stayed closed. He knocked once, and if no one answered, he walked away with calm and self-respect. The man he was becoming didn't hand out endless chances to people who had proven they'd waste them. He didn't argue for clarity from those who chose not to understand him. He didn't lose sleep over people who could rest easily after hurting him. He didn't idealize loyalty from those who never offered it. He didn't praise suffering in the name of love, because he had learned that. The shift. Choosing himself. He learned that love without respect slowly destroys you, and kindness without boundaries drains you until there's nothing left. So he chose himself, and it was the hardest choice he ever made because he still cared deeply. He still remembered special days. He still carried hope in his chest. But now he gave that love to himself first. Now he was loyal to his peace, his growth, his healing. Now he remembered his own milestones. Now he celebrated his own victories. Now he kept the promises he once broke to himself. And in that quiet, sacred space where he rebuilt his heart, he found a strength no praise could create and no disappointment could take away. People still talk about him, some confused, some guilty, some regretful. They wonder why he doesn't reach out, why he feels distant, why he seems like a different version of the man they used to know. But the truth is, he didn't vanish. He simply became too complete for the spaces that once fractured him. Too healed for the hands that once let him fall. Too focused to turn back toward the chaos that used to pull him under. And they'll never know about the nights he spent alone rewriting the story of his life. They'll never understand how hard it was to let go of people he once saw as family, or how deeply it hurt to finally stop giving where he wasn't valued. They'll never witness the tears he wiped away in silence or the quiet moments he struggled behind his smiles. But he knows. And that's enough, because now when he enters a room, he carries his peace with him, not his wounds. Now when he listens, he doesn't absorb the turmoil around him. Now when he speaks, it's not to prove anything, it's to protect his energy. Now when he loves, it's not to fill empty spaces, but to share wholeness. The man who rose quietly. An overflow. And if someone chooses to leave, he doesn't chase after them. He doesn't fall apart. He doesn't question his own value. He simply whispers a quiet thank you and lets the door close softly behind them. He is the man who chose himself after giving every part of his heart to everyone else. He is the man who finally understood that being strong doesn't mean carrying the weight of the world. It means carrying your own soul first. He is the man who realized you can love people from afar, you can forgive without inviting them back, and you can walk away even when your heart still holds care for them. He is the man who will never again plead to be noticed, because now he notices himself, and that changes everything. And maybe he still aches on certain days. Maybe the memories still echo in the quiet moments. Maybe he still wonders why those he loved so fiercely returned only a fraction of that love. But he no longer lets those thoughts hold him back. Because now he doesn't need perfect endings. He doesn't need explanations. He doesn't need apologies that were never offered. He only needs his own truth. And he carries that truth like protection. He wears it with confidence. He is no longer the man they once knew. He is no longer the boy who bent until he cracked. He is no longer the spirit who settled for pieces. He is the man who, final message to the broken ones, rose from his own ashes, who chose healing over old patterns and peace over pleasing people. And if that makes him harder to access, then so be it. Because the man who once poured everything into everyone else has finally kept something for himself. And this time, he isn't letting it slip away.